Good morning, everybody. For those of you who already managed to log in, nice to see some of your faces on the screen over here. I'm Kevin Graff. I'm sure the vast majority of you on the line know me, heard about me. In a little bit, we got a lot of clients are on this thing. We always open up 100 seats for this thing, which means we always get about 50% of those people showing up. So more and more people will trickle in. This is just part of our series of free webinars that we're doing just for the month of January. We've got another one coming up next week on the 21 deadly selling sins that we see out in retail floors and what you can do to avoid them. Anyway, casual conversation this morning about 10 retail store management problems and some ideas on what I think you can do to solve them. We've been training retailers, store managers in particular, for about 3 decades. So we have a pretty good idea of what's going on in the stores, what managers are struggling with. And so that's how we kind of got to these 10 ideas. So let me walk you through these things to give you an idea of some thoughts that I have on how you can begin to move forward. I'm not going to solve these things from a comprehensive perspective today. I'll give you an idea at the end of something that we're doing that might help you more comprehensively, but I'll share with you some ideas of things that'll get you started moving in the right direction. So let's get into this thing because all you guys have busy days out there. Here's the very first one. It drives everybody nuts. Out of control staff turnover rates. I don't know how we get on with building our businesses when we're just trying to plug the ongoing hole of staff turnover rates. We'll never get, I always say this all the time, we'll never get anywhere if we're suffering through 35, 40, 45, 50, 60, 70, 80% turnover rates. There's a craziness that gets attached to it. And somehow, some way we've been seduced into, I think, believing that out of control turnover rates are just the norm. It's just part and parcel of being in retail. And I say this all the time. I don't need my staff to stay forever. If I could just get them to stay for 6 months longer, right? If I could just retain them for 6 months longer, I cut my turnover rates in half. If I can get them to stay 3 months longer, I cut my turnover rates in by 25%. And those are massive differences to you when it comes to being able to run your store. We always talk about the cost of turnover, and nobody really measures it out there anymore on a specific basis. But depending on the position that you're hiring for, it's going to cost you somewhere between $5,000 and $20,000 for every employee that you hire. And it's not just the recruiting costs and the marketing costs and the time that you spend in interviewing them and onboarding them. It's not just that. It's the lost sales. Like take the example of a salesperson who's too new to really have the product knowledge that they need, all the sales skills they need, the technical skills, the service skills. Think about all the lost sales that we incur because they're not up to speed yet. And that's why we always talk about getting turnover under control. And there are 2 truisms that are actually true. No one's ever quit a company. They've only quit their boss. So think about that. So solution number 1, if you want to get your turnover rates down, you got to be a better boss, right? All of us as managers, whether we're the store manager, the district manager, the assistant manager, we just got to be better people to work for at the end of the day. And we'll talk about that. The other one is people don't tend to quit when they're winning. If you go to the retailers out there that are really struggling with sales, right? And performance is terrible and they're closing stores. I promise you their turnover rates are through the roof. But then you go to the retailers that are like winning perpetually. They get all the good press. It's a good vibe when you go in the store. Their turnover rates are a fraction of that. So if you combine those 2 ideas, you start to get an idea of a blueprint of what you do going forward to go, how do I get my turnover rates down? I'm going to be a better boss. Or if I'm managing managers, I've got to teach these people how to be better bosses. And we got to get people to win. We got to teach them how to succeed out on the floor. So some additional ideas, some of which are building off of all of that. Number 1, spend more time coaching your teams. For all the managers that are on the line here, and I've learned this lesson from a couple of my clients where they said every time they layer in more coaching, another coaching system, another one-on-one coaching mandated session with their staff, turnover rates go down. As you create this coaching culture, retention goes up. If you ignore your staff, that's the other side of that coin, they're going to leave. So we've got to spend more time out on the floor talking to our staff, And I always talk about the 90-10 rule, right? 90% of what comes out of our mouth as managers is supportive, it's positive, 10% is corrective. You and all of your staff do way more right than you could ever possibly do wrong out there. So go out there, start catching them doing all these things right, and find all the areas of improvement. And when you finally get around to talking about the things that they could improve because you told them 9 things they're doing great, they'll actually listen to you. You got to make them feel like they're winning, right? If you look at the type of staff and how they are raised growing up that we have working in stores today, where they got ongoing feedback and ongoing recognition, and they could be the prime minister, the president, they could be an astronaut, anything they ever want to be, they have a desire, they have a need to know that they're making progress, that they're winning. Make sure that you point out, even when we're not winning on the sales side of things, what are the things that we're doing inside the store that look like progress? Completed all the markdowns, completed some training modules, got 3 5-star Google reviews today. Where's the point of winning in there? Let them know that. Focus more on your star performers. Don't fall into the trap of losing star performers because you spend all your time with the poor performers, right? It's natural to think, well, I got to go fix them. Yeah, you do. But if you ignore the star performers, you can't afford to lose those people. They deserve 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of your time, not the other way around on that thing. So keep that in mind. Get serious about developing your bench strength. Acknowledge that you're going to get some turnover, but we have to get to a point where we develop bench strength. And we'll come back. I think my next point actually talks about that a little bit more in depth. And run better interviews. Stop getting tricked in the interview process. And people always say, Graff, it's really hard to find staff out there. So we're using the fog the mirror test when we're hiring people. Right? If they can come in and fog a mirror, they have a pulse, we're probably going to hire them. And I'm like, okay, it's easier for me to talk about than for you to do it. But the damage to you, your brand, your time of settling, so to speak, in the interview process, I mean, it's massive. Like, it's so detrimental to you and your business when we do that. Just learn how to run a better interview. Make sure you've got all the right questions. Know how to set the stage in the interview. Know how to ask the questions, how to dig deeper, how to evaluate them more effectively. We always say the problem in most interviews is not the candidate. It's the person doing the interview, right? Learn how to be a better interview. It will serve you well. And finally, you knew this one was going to show up on there. If we want to get turnover rates down, we all just have to be better bosses, better people to work for out there. So let's talk about some of that stuff. This is a big one. If you're a store manager on the line today, part of what I'm going to talk about is probably out of your scope of control, but not all of it's out of your scope of control. Weak to non-existing onboarding and succession training programs. Two different things, kind of similar things. Onboarding, the training we put somebody through when they first join the organization. Succession training, you're already in the organization. What's the training program they have in place that kicks in to start to develop you for future positions in the company? How do I move you from a salesperson to a key holder, from a key holder to a department supervisor to the assistant manager, to the manager, to the district manager? You get the idea. There is a massive correlation between turnover rates and onboarding, right? Like, if you track your turnover rates in your business in the first 3 months of employment, you're probably going to find your turnover rates are massive, right? Like, it's the highest period of time for turnover. And then with every successive 3-month period of employment, that starts to come down, and it comes down, and it comes down, and it comes down. So the question you have to ask yourself is, so why do people quit so early? Why do they quit in the first 2 weeks, month, 2 months, 3 months? And the usual answer is, if they don't feel successful, if the anxiety of doing the job is too high, it's easier not to come to work than it is to come to work. Like, I'll just stay home. I'll go get another job. I haven't been incorporated into the team. I have to deal with customers. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not having success out on the sales floor. Like, if you just spent more time onboarding them, so when they finally hit the floor, man, they feel supported. They've got the confidence, the skills. We always talk when we're in classrooms, we talk about the onboarding process that's in place over at Sleep Country Canada. It's 6 weeks from the time you get hired till you talk to your first customer, right? Like, so you think about what's going on in that period of time. By the time you get to a customer, your confidence is so high. So their turnover rates are instinctively lower along the way, right? Succession training, same idea. We talked on the previous slide about starting to build your bench strength. Succession training, when it's built out right, goes, hey, wait a minute. If I have a assistant manager leave, I'm not sweating it too much because I've got two other people that are already trained to become an assistant manager. They just have to go through the last little bit of certification. Like, it's a brilliant process. Now, as I said, if you're a store manager online, these ideas, if you don't have those programs in place inside your organization right now, it's probably out of your scope of control, but not completely. You can still, even if, if you have a onboarding program in place in your business, your company's built you one, for goodness sakes, run it properly, right? I know it's going to take you some time, but if it results in that person being more successful and staying with you longer, it's time really well spent, right? Two, even if you don't have a really great one, you know what to do. You've done the job. You're running the job. Mentor them. Partner them up with people. Hold their hand. Like, don't make the mistake of going, well, they've been here for 2 weeks now. I haven't heard a complaint. They must be doing okay. Like, work with them consistently to get them up to speed so they become fully successful in your business. Running one-off training programs that don't work. Training programs, the term program is your clue normally to go, we might, not always, we might have a problem here. Because a program, in my mind, typically means that you're going to take the course, and then you're done. There's no application in it. And that's a challenge, right? Because I always use the analogy of going to the gym, right? If you went to the gym just one time, and you stayed there for 12 hours, right, with a personal trainer, and you busted your butt for hours, but you never went back, does anything get better? Nothing really gets better. You're just sore for a week. But if you went every day just for 15 minutes, just 15 minutes every day, but you went every day, everything would start to improve. And that's the notion of being able to do this, right? And so as a manager out there, understand that a lot of the skills that you're looking to train people on, and we'll talk about sales skills, those don't come easy, right? People, even if people have worked for 5 years, 7 years, they've been 10 years in retail, believe me when I tell you that I've got confidence that they know what they're doing, but I don't have confidence that they're experts at applying proper sales skills, because we just tend to kind of do what we do out there, our thing, so to speak. But there's always a better way to do this. So look at your sales training. The content's probably okay. Can all your new staff access it immediately? Or do we have to wait for the training to happen again? And now they're working for you for a month or 2 months before they actually get around to it. That's a problem. Is it reinforced daily? And that's where you as a manager come in, because if you can figure out a way at your shift starter in the morning, as an example, to have a little sales tip of the day, as an example, or have a topic, a step of the week that you're going to focus on. This week, we're going to really focus on adding on. Closing this up, pick your topic. But that's what we're going to talk about all week. And we're going to get really good at it this week. Your staff will get better. If you're just talking about the merchandising and the markdowns and loss prevention, and there was a paperwork problem, okay, I know it's important, but we got to start talking about all this other stuff all the time. And if we do that, that's where people get better. And it's a massive issue for you as a manager when you're looking around and you're seeing customers not getting waited on, or somebody's waiting on a customer as if they're a vending machine. They're just responding to a customer, pressing buttons on them like that. There's no value in that. I may as well just sell it online if that's what we're doing. It doesn't work. Training's got to be a system that gets integrated into your daily store operation. So, if I was talking to your training departments, I would talk about this at a higher level. For you as managers, just think about what you're doing this week. What's the topic? How are you bringing it to life? What are you reinforcing this week? What are the tips? What's the skill we're going to work on? What's going to be your plan next week? What are you going to roll with next week? It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. Get your staff involved in the process. Get on the Google, get some ideas, and get moving on talking to your people about how it is we're serving and selling to our customers every single day, right? And for managers, your skills, it's the same topic, right? It's management skills every day, every week, every month. Like, how are we going to get our staff to be better at performance coaching, at getting compliance on standards, at building motivation plans, on engaging their teams, on making sure everybody's aligned with priorities, on driving whatever the topic is. That's like going to the gym, man. We got to talk about that stuff all the time, because otherwise what happens as a manager, you're already so damn busy in your store. You're going to be busy regardless if we're directing you to find new and better ways or not, right? You're just paddling along. Now, all of a sudden, we just go, no. If we stopped and thought more proactively, we'd start to make some progress instead of doing reactively. Priorities. Priority management is huge for every store manager. It's huge for every district manager. And it's huge that you execute it with all of your team members so that there's not this ever confusion, for lack of a better word, inside the store in terms of what's most important. What are those top 2, 3, 4, 5 priorities? What are the most important standards that you need them to be able to comply with? Like, where are we at with all that? And if we don't clearly know it in the stores, we've got a problem, right? And I always say with the new staff that are working for you, if they're just coming in and working a shift for the sake of a shift, that's like death, right? Like, they're not going to last very long. But if all of a sudden we go, no, this is what if I have measures of success, we clearly know what the most important objectives and standards are, and we're all paddling in the same direction, and we're talking about it, we're measuring ourselves against these things. Ta-da! Next thing you know, people are winning. There's purpose in their jobs. We get moving in the right direction. So get out a piece of paper, list out what your top objectives and standards are. Objectives are your financial measures of success: sales, average sale, conversion rate, wage cost percent, shrink, as an example, if you're measuring in your business, a margin, if that's something that's visible to you that you believe your organization gives you control over. Standards. I don't want a full list of standards. We'll come back and talk to them. What are the most important ones that you're battling in your store right now? Is it something as simple as like dress code, service standards, selling standards, loyalty program signups in your store, window execute? I don't know, whatever your key standards are. List these things all out. And then start to evaluate your performance, whether it's on a weekly or a monthly basis. Some of your organizations have scorecards out there, but then start sewing it into your shift starter discussions, right? Start talking about what our priorities are. Just take 1 or 2 of them, make sure everybody's aligned with them, make sure people start talking about plans on how we're going to achieve them, make sure we're talking about the reality of where we truthfully are with our standards in the business. If we do those things, we get better. Lack of a systematic approach to driving productivity. It's this battle of just trying to drive sales, right? And people, I think sometimes it's like a hope and a prayer, right, of trying to drive sales. There's a process, there's a blueprint to follow that gets you better productivity out of every human being, out of every team, out of every store. And if you know what the blueprint is, I always say, as a manager to follow, life gets an awful lot easier. Like, it's incredibly frustrating to be in a situation where it's like, okay, well, the store is not doing very well. Okay, we need to sell more. Oh, okay, great. That's helpful. Or that department's not doing very well. Sales are down 10% in that department. What are we going to do? Well, we have to get sales up. Well, that's not very helpful. Or, this entire territory or that individual, right, is really struggling. What's the plan? If we build the system into it, if we talk about clearly defining what our goals are, and I'm going to come back and I'll give you a diagram of this a little bit. So just pay attention on this thing. First off, people have to know what the goals are, and they have to start to chase these goals. We have to constantly measure performance and share results with people. Number 3, we have to make performance matter. We have to drive up a sense of accountability. It's got nothing to do with firing somebody, but we do have to make people feel a sense of responsibility to achieving the goals that we've got in point number 1. We have to provide way more training and coaching. Why? Because we're telling them these are the goals you've got to meet. Here's how you're doing it. And by the way, you have to do it. Now we have to give them the skills, the support, the coaching they need to be able to do it. And then lastly, we have to make winning worthwhile. And if we can do all of those things, then all of a sudden, what we get, this is for those of you who've worked with me before, come to any of our training programs, you know I talk about this all the time. I've gone around the world talking on stage about the 5 foundations. These are the 5 principles that will get you, guaranteed, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, better productivity out of everybody. And it's really simple to understand, but it is this powerful blueprint that will generate for you in your stores literally dozens of things that you can do to drive better productivity. And productivity in your store is likely measured in terms of sales. I get everybody chasing goals, like just ferociously chasing them. We share results. We got boards up in the back. We're doing midday reads. We're asking about performance constantly. If we didn't make it, you're on fire, but can you tell me 3 things we could have done that would have got us to the promised land yesterday? Or what are the 5 things we've got to do today? We have training and coaching that's alive and working constantly in the stores. And there's a big difference in your store between whether people are winning or losing. Like there's just got to be a whole range of reward and recognition systems in place. If we approach running our stores more systematically, in this case, the 5 foundations, we have a greater chance of sustainable success, not one-off success, but sustainable success, so that we move intelligently forward, not just getting to the store and going, okay, guys, we have to have a big day today. It's like, okay, great. I love the enthusiasm, but what's the plan? And that's the idea. This one, allowing poor performers to exist on your schedule for way too long, right? It's a problem. It's a big problem, right, out there. And I'm empathetic to it. Everybody's, again, we talked about it before. Kevin, you don't understand. It's really hard to find staff. So I've got somebody and they show up every day. I'm taking that as a victory. And I'm like, yeah, right. But we run into this problem, right? I want to get to just one second. Yeah, I'm going to come back to that for a second. I'll go backwards on this thing. I always ask people, I said, look, how would you rate your staff, right? If we had to rate them between A's, B's, and C's, A's are your stars. You'd clone them if you could. B's are your average performer, doing a pretty good job. They show up more often than not. You know, they're not stealing too much. And then you got your C performers. They're the ones who tricked you in the interview, right? Or they might be related to the boss. Normally, if I ask you to tell me by percentage, how's it look in your store, in your territory, it would kind of look like this for most people. 20% are A's, 60% are B's, 20% are C's. Here's the problem, though. You can't build a business with your B's, right? They're just your status quo. So what if there's no such thing as a B rating, right? What if your B's are actually C's? Now, don't panic. I'm not telling you that your B's are C's and you need to go and fire all these people. But it is a real mindset to kind of go, well, wait a minute. The only way I'm really going to build my business, to get to the promised land, to elevate the service standard, the sales standard, the overall success of the store is with my A's. The B's, they're doing okay, but they're not the ones who are setting it on fire for you, right? They're not like driving this business. So the argument is you got to get your B's to become A's, right? Easier said than done, but it's possible, right? You won't get all of them become A's, but we got to get our C's, some of those C's to become B's so that we have a chance of going to success. So let me go backwards here to this thing. Allowing poor performers. Number 1, set minimum standards of performance and just get serious about it. Like, what is it, right? If you track individual performance, it's probably sales per hour in your store. What's the minimum that they can run at, right? And below that minimum, you just got to like kick into place some performance coaching, right? Because you can't survive down there. You know, you take the example of, you know, a full-time employee that's running what, let's say, you know, $20 an hour below, you know, your acceptable level. Well, they're working 2,000 hours this year, right? That's $40,000 in like lost sales from one individual. What if they're $50 below, right? Oh my God, it's 100 grand in lost sales off one person. How many people do we have like that in our business? So what's that minimum standard performance? Get comfortable learning how to deal with conflicts, right? Because in these particular instances where we have to deal with poor performers, there's an inherent conflict that goes along with that. So you got to develop some strategies on, okay, I'm going to have this conversation with somebody. What's my strategy going in? And we teach people about conflict management strategy so that you at least know how you're going to approach the conversation. If you want to get rid of the poor performance problem, I don't mean the individual, the problem, way more feedback, like way more feedback. See a problem, address the problem. See a another problem, address the problem, right? Don't let it fester. So, when people all of a sudden start dropping off, just pick, it doesn't matter what metric it is. It's total sales, it's their email sign up, it's their items per se. It doesn't matter. The moment there's a problem, feedback. If we get on it sooner rather than waiting for it to become a problem, once it becomes a problem, that's conflict. When it's just a one-off, it's an easier thing to be able to deal with. And I always talk about running 5-minute coaching sessions. It's a program we put in place for a lot of our clients, not everybody, where we have the managers sit down once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on the side of the store, one-on-one with their staff for a 5-minute coaching session. It's a bottom-up coaching, and the employees do all the work for the coaching. So don't panic if you're a manager that I'm going to give you more administrative work. It's not that at all. They do all the administrative work. They essentially coach themselves. But a shocking thing happens is that when they know they have to come to this coaching session, accountability rises because they have to self-confess about how it's going. Action planning improves because now we're building out plans of what they're going to do to get better on these things. Relationships improve at the same time because now you're spending one-on-one time with these people. There's this wide range of benefits that come out of this. The end result is we end up with a lot less poor performers. Oh, I hate that this one's even in the presentation because it makes me mean and nasty and cranky. Non-compliance on standards. I can make people curl up in the fetal position in the corner and suck their thumb and cry when I talk about this because I can get a little edgy about this thing. Standards are those minimum non-negotiables that we have around the store. So pay attention, minimum, they're things that are way down here, right? They're not, oh, be great if we get it. It's no, minimums. And they're non-negotiable. These things are supposed to happen all the time. We all have standards in our stores. Housekeeping standards, punctuality standards, dress code standards, merchandising standards, selling standards, service standards, admin standards, loss prevention standards. Your list probably gets a little bit longer. If I just started there, if you thought about it for a moment and I asked you to take all of your standards that you have and put them in a hat and store them up, and then give yourself a score on compliance on standards on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give yourself? Now, most people would give themselves a 6 or 7, some people 8, right? The only acceptable answer is 10 out of 10. Less than 10 out of 10 is failure. It's the reason you have way too much stress in your job. It's the reason you lose customers, you lose staff, margins down. It's just, all this stuff happens because we're not 10 out of 10, right? And go back to what the definition is, right? The minimum non-negotiables. So they're minimums, right? They're not supposed to be hard. Show up on time, wear your uniform, say hi to a customer, follow a planogram, pick up the garbage, don't steal too much. This is not very complicated, what we ask. And they're supposed to happen all the time. But we've been seduced into believing that, no, you can't get staff to do the right job. I'm well, I don't know, as an employer, I think we meet our standards, right? We have a payday. We pay them on time every day. We pay them the right amount every time. There's this fair trade thing that happens, and that's oversimplifying it. But to the degree that you can't get compliance on standards is to the same degree that you and your team are not achieving success. Your customers aren't happy because they can't trust the shopping experience, because sometimes they come in and the staff are great and they wait on me, and sometimes I can't find anybody, and sometimes it's merchandised well, sometimes it's not. And it just falls down, and your stress level is higher than it needs to be. So let's talk about this a little bit. Number one, define what your top 10 standards are. If you don't have a list already, if you don't have on your wall your list of your top 7 points of pride, your commitments, your standards, 7, 10, 6, 15, whatever it is, get it. How are your staff supposed to comply with your standards if they don't know what they are, right? It's the simplest thing in the world. Go just write them down. They don't have to be complicated. Number 2, make sure everybody knows them and has the ability to meet them. Now, the reality is the majority of them are so minimum that it's not a massive skill level. It's more of a focus level. Some of them, it's ability, right? So if you've got a standard in place for your cashiers to ask customers to sign up for the loyalty program, you better have trained them properly on how to introduce it, how to deal with the objection, how to follow it up, how to ask for it. If you've told your staff that they have to get over there and wait on customers, make sure they know exactly how to do it so they can open the door effectively and not always hear, I'm just looking, right? Give them the skills to be able to do that. then get on the floor and start to measure these things, right? Most of your standards are going to be measured with your eyeballs in a retail store. Not all of them, but the vast majority are measured by your eyeballs. If you're hiding in the back office, you can't see it. Get out on the floor, measure it. See non-compliance, address it right away, right? Not mean, not nasty. It's just a conversation with somebody, reminding them about what our minimum commitments are that we hold ourselves to, right? What are those points of pride? And remember, only a 10 out of 10 is acceptable in your store. It is, from a manager's point of view, more of a mindset, more of a gut check than it is a skill set to get compliance on your standards. We have a right to run our stores the right way. We're not about being bullies. We're not going to be mean or aggressive, but we are going to run our stores with a higher degree of pride out there. This is the next challenge that's out there. Focusing on a great customer experience, but not a great staff experience. It's really been debunked over the past 3-4 years. We've talked about it for a long time. Finally, as we've gone through the pandemic together, I hear it now at conferences always that, hey, our first priority is creating a great staff experience. Our second priority is a great customer experience. So we're not saying customers aren't important, but think about this. If the staff experience isn't going very well, how's the customer experience going? Probably not very well. And if the customer experience isn't going very well, how are results going? Not very well. And then you turn around, well, if the staff are really happy and they're having a really great experience, then the customers are probably having a great experience. If the customers are having a great experience, then the results are going to be there. Ta-da, right? So as a manager, you're the closest one to your staff, right? It's ultimately your responsibility to create that amazing staff experience. Yes, your organization has a responsibility to make sure that, the pay and recognition programs are in place, that they've got the right onboarding type of thing, the right leadership. Yes, you're the most impactful because you're the immediate leader for your teams. And you should have this mindset every day when you walk into your store. It's kind of like, okay, what am I going to do today to make it an amazing experience for my staff that are in the store today? Like, what are the 2 things I'm going to do? What are the 3 things I'm going to do? Maybe a day's too micro for you. Maybe it's, what's my weekly plan to make this an amazing staff experience this week? And if you achieve that, man, oh man, go back to point number 1. Turnover rates are going to start to plummet in your store. Customer experience is going to go up. Your stress level is going to go down, and you're going to be building people out there. Make sure that your teams feel valued and they're doing work that's meaningful to them. Do you know why they come to work? Right? That's a big question to ask. Build a really great store environment. They don't just happen organically, right? They are the result of what we do or don't do as managers in the store. Like if you said, I want to have a store environment that's really fun. Okay, well, it doesn't just happen. There are things that you have to do. I want a store environment that's really team oriented. Okay, great, terrific. What are the things that you do as a manager to make it really team oriented? Right? I want a store where people feel safe, right? Not just from a physical safety, but from an emotional safety perspective. Okay, great. What are the things you can do as a manager? So sit down, write down, what are all those adjectives that would describe the right store environment for you in your company? And then get working on what are all the tactical things you can do to make that stuff happen. Great reward and recognition programs. Don't wait for your head office to come up with it. What are all the recognition things that you can put into place in your stores so that your staff have this great sense of appreciation every time that they come to work? Number 4, have more fun, right? I always say if it's not fun in your store, it's broken. It's really broken, right? This is retail. Most of us on the line, I look at the participant list. Oh, we got a few people on the line that are saving lives, but for the rest of us, we're not saving lives, right? We're selling wireless products, we're selling other stuff. Like it's supposed to be fun, right? Retail is an experiential thing. Make sure we do that and recognize the value of flexibility, coaching, training, and development. Those things will get you to create better staff experience. I think this is number 9 on the list. I should have been counting along. I should put numbers on these things. I can't remember these things. Chasing metrics to the plan. You've all been pushed at some particular point. You've probably pushed your staff to improve a certain metric, average basket, as your conversion rates down, your margins down, whatever it is, right? We've all been pushed on it. The problem is you can't coach a metric, right? It's a number. It's all about the behaviors behind. And so now all of a sudden, as a manager, what you need to do is learn how to actually create these plans that actually work to drive your metrics. And when you do that, next thing you know, they start to go up, right? And you start to look at it. And this becomes really important. In most organizations, in most malls, as an example, customer traffic rates are down. Well, if customer traffic rates are down, there's only two things you can do to maintain and then grow your sales. You have to increase your conversion rate, sell to more of the customers that actually come into your store, and then you got to get a little bit more money out of everybody. That's your average basket. That's not oversimplifying it. If traffic goes down, I have to get one and or both of those numbers going up. What's your plan? How are you going to actually execute that in your store? So it starts with, you got to understand all the financial sides of the business. Now, as a manager, you never used to, but now we teach people about retail math. We teach them about income statements, and we teach them about inventory turnover, and we teach them about GMROI, and we teach them about the reality of shrink and wage cost and margin. And when managers get it, they start to understand and they start to make better decisions. But then secondarily, you need to know how to create an action plan that works. We spend a lot of time doing that. Just as a manager, even if I don't teach you how to do it, just do a little bit of research on what are all the components of an action plan. What are the 2, 3, 4 things that every action plan has to have in place inside of it, right? Just make sure you've got enough detail in it, and then talk about your action plan literally every day. Don't write it and then put it in a binder. That's not going to do anything for you. This is the biggest sin out there. This is the last one. We promote people to be a manager without teaching them how to manage. And that's it. For me, it's the biggest frustration that's out there, because we toss a good salesperson into a store manager's job. And, here's what we normally teach them, right? We do a good job in retail of this. We really do a great job in most organizations about teaching people about scheduling, inventory, administration, and all the processes, right? We're good at that. What's the hardest part of the job for every store manager? Their staff. Finding them, keeping them, getting them to get along, getting them to execute things, getting better productivity out of everybody. That's the hardest part, right? It's not receiving stock and figuring out how to follow a planogram. That's not it. The hardest part is about the people. And that's the part where managers need the single most support. And we talk about, what the world as it is and how this has changed out there. This has always been important, but think about this. Your customers and your staff are more knowledgeable and demanding than ever before. And it's not that I don't care about customers. Staff, their expectations of a great work experience have gone from here up to here, right? Like it's amazing how they expect so much more of the job. And that's why managers have to be more skilled than ever before. Your competition, better. Just outright better than ever before. Competition in terms of other retailers doing what you do. Competition for staff, right? There's all these new types of businesses, non-retail businesses, that look a lot more like Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, or we're stealing our staff out there. What are we going to do to create these great work environments for them? And the other reality is that, quite frankly, we all know that we should be getting better performance from everybody that's in your store and your bottom line. That's my 10 things that I want to share with you guys today in terms of what the challenges are. At the back end of these things, I always tell you about a little program that we're doing. We've launched 2 new virtual programs. The response to them is, I don't know why it took me so long to figure this concept out. We do a lot of classroom training. Everybody has a lot of people online use our online training, our ready to serve programs, our get managing programs. And then we used to always run classroom stuff. And then we finally got right, because we set our ego aside and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. And we created 2 new virtual certificate programs, one for district managers. I'm not going to talk to you about that. But then we just launched the Certificate of Excellence in Retail Store Management program. It's a purely virtual. So there's no time out of the stores. There's no travel involved in this thing at all. It runs over the course of 7 weeks. I'll tell you how to do it. We only accept 100 people into this thing, right? We just launched this thing. I think I'm already at like 30, 35. The DM program is already at 70, 75. These will both sell out. These programs, we'll run them again out there. This one starts kind of mid-March, goes to the end of April. It's a lighter load than the district manager program that some of you have your organization coming to. Let me just give you an idea of what we talk about in this program. The real benefit of this thing, you can see the books over the side. We talk about the end results of being lower staff turnover, fewer customer complaints, better KPI results, stronger standards, more motivated and engaged teams, less performance problems, yay, better store results, less stress for managers, and overall just a better run store. You can see the topics that we're going to talk about. We spend a lot of time talking about the 5 foundations, about hiring and keeping talent. We build strategies for building motivated and engaged teams, 2 very different things, both very tactical. So you leave there understanding how you actually build a plan to do it. We talk about strategies to actually drive your metrics. There's an optional session on the business of the business. That's that retail math thing. We give you strategies, get standards complied with in your store. And we talk about dealing with performance problems. How do you deal with the conflict? And how do you say it to your staff when it's not going well? The innovation, the genius behind this training is this. For managers, you invest a grand total over the course of the entire week of 3 to 4 hours in this program, because we know you got a job to do out there. So this is what the schedule looks like. It's really 4 days. Friday, we don't have an expectation of you because we know that's busy in your stores. Monday, it's pre-learning. You log into the portal. There's some pre-recorded lessons in there. We've got some videos in there, some short PDF documents. It's what we refer to as flipped learning. So depending on what the topic is, you're going to learn a little bit about the topic on your own before Tuesday. Tuesday, you'll attend a live virtual event, right? I'll be running a webinar similar to this where we'll unpack and go into more detail the content of that program, expand it, clarify it. Really important. On Wednesday, we give you activities to do, not classroom activities. Activities that force you to apply the content. But don't worry, this is stuff you should be doing in your store. It just makes you a better store manager. So all Tuesday afternoon, all day Wednesday, you've got 1 or 2 activities that you get kind of working on. You start to build out 5 foundation plans, turnover reduction plans, staff motivation plan. These are things that'll make your store run better, right? But then on Thursday, you meet virtually with a cohort of 10 other store managers from other chains from across the country. You'll get your little intact group and you'll meet virtually with them. And this will become your group for this 7 weeks. You'll get to know each other really well. And you'll talk to each other about, okay, what did you do? You're going to talk about what you put into place, what you learned, what didn't work. And then you're going to hear from everybody else how they've approached the problem. It's a phenomenal learning opportunity. And then on Friday, hey, listen, we leave you alone that day, get back in your store, run your store the way it is. It's a total of 3 to 4 hours a week. It's a pretty light load, but it's a really creative way. All the training professionals that I know love this approach. So I know we've hit it this approach out of park with the HR crowd. Store operators love it because they go, wait a minute, I don't have to invest in having my staff be out of the store. I don't have to cover the store. They can stay here, right, and still run their store. They're going to spend 30 minutes here or an hour there. Like, it's a manageable thing to be able to do, right? So that's the approach on this thing. For the first 50 that sign up, I think I only have 20 seats left at the early adopter price. It's only $5.95. Next time we run this, I promise you this is going to be more expensive, but we wanted to kind of just get this out into the marketplace. If you want to sign up for that program, you can do it on our website. You can see the website down on the bottom, graffretailer.com, and then it's virtual-bootcamp. Or if it's easier, just send us in an email and we'll get you signed up in that program. All right. So that's our time together today. 45 minutes is kind of what I thought. So I'm doing fairly good on this thing. I have phenomenal empathy for store managers. It's a job that is tougher today than ever before. Do yourself a favor. If you're running an organization, do all of your managers a favor. Dig into some learning. Learn some little tricks of the trade, some processes, some systems, some tools, some blueprints that will make your life that much easier and more effective. When you do that, you're going to do great. So thank you guys once again for joining us here today. I might see some of you next week on the next webinar on the 21 Deadly Selling Sins. Get out there. Have a successful day, everybody. Thanks very much.